absolute banger. Coming up this weekend at featherweight, we have two guys that do not know quit until their bodies quit. That's pretty much it. Shane Burgos is taking on Billy Quarantillo. And Matt, let this be said right now. All I want for Christmas is a Blake Griffin dunk. Well, we got Blake Griffin dunked on by Billy Quarantillo in his Instagram story after his last fight against one great striker, Mr. Gabriel Benitez. And we said Gabriel's going to win that fight. His leg kicks, his body kicks, they're all the difference. And Billy Q's cardio didn't look all that great against Gavin Tucker. Well, again, we get dunked on all over the internet. Everybody made fun of us. And so what? Who cares? We have fun. We move on. We're in the good graces of Billy Q. I had a great conversation with him after the fact. And he said, yeah, in the Tucker fight, a body kick made the difference. That's what led to the cardio issues in the fight. And then since then, all he did was core and ab workouts, and that's why it went on. And Billy has been a cardio king except for in that one fight. So don't let that one outlier define the man and his whole career. 100%. All right, let me say some nice things about Billy. He's got great cardio. To get into the UFC or even on Contender Series, he beat, and this is going to sound crazy, from the Gary Roberts Performance Center, one Adrian Valleka, a guy who was on our show before that fight, which is kind of crazy, and trained with Anthony Romero for the longest time, who will end up in the UFC, but he got the win over the guy that trains Connor McDavid, so that's pretty cool. And realistically, Billy in the UFCs look good, except for that one fight. He outlasted Spike Carlisle, who's doing it on the regional scene. He knocked out Kyle Nelson, Canadian. He loses to Gavin Tucker, Canadian, and then he beats Gabriel Benitez and looks amazing. For Shane Burgos, Hurricane Shane, the last two losses. Giant puncher Josh Emmett, who's coming back with a vengeance. Giant puncher Edson Barboza. But before that, the wins over Kurt Hollabaugh, Cub Swanson. And Matt, I'm too excited about this fight. You are. Mako and Amir Khani. So I love this one because for Burgos, we don't often see Tiger Schulman strikers. And when we do, it's Jimmy Rivera, Shane Burgos, and oh, by the way, Julio Arce. And I love what they do.
Cardio is going to be such a big factor in this fight. That's really all I can think about right now. Because Shane Burgos and Billy Q are two guys who not only have good cardio, they fight with absurdly high outputs. And that really is a big point. I remember you gave me a really hard time saying Costa didn't have good cardio. But some guys who just fight with a crazy output are able to sustain that for a really long time. And even though Burgos is a guy who might throw hundreds of punches every round, quite literally, he's not a guy who I really worry about in the third round of, his output's going to fall off a cliff, and that's how Billy Q is going to find his way back into this fight. Because for Quarantillo, that's sort of his window to get back into a lot of fights. And I don't mean this to be disrespectful, this is a huge compliment. Normally, he's not the most technical guy in his fights. Normally, he's fighting a guy who just their strikes might be a little bit more technical. They might be faster. They might have more knockout power. But he's such a well-rounded MMA fighter and somebody who does have that grit and grind sort of a style. And the thing I really like about Billy Q is that he does put a pressure on guys to where it's going to really sap their gas tank. And body shots are going to be a really big key to this fight. I'm glad you brought that up about Gavin Tucker and Billy Q because Tucker's not the only guy who throws a lot of body shots in this division. Shane Burgos is somebody who likes to start his boxing combinations by starting with hooks to the body and then going back up to the top. And I think that's going to be a really big key to this fight because let's say both guys do have very similar cardio, very similar outputs in their UFC tenures and careers up until this point. If Burgos is the one going to the body a lot more in this fight, especially early on, I do think that's going to bring Quarantillo back down to a more human level, especially with his own output. And that's where we can see Burgos really start to pull apart because the only guys we've seen Burgos struggle with in the UFC are guys who can hit him harder than he can hit them. I don't think Billy Q has the power edge in this matchup. The only two guys we've ever seen who hit harder than Shane Burgos are, like you mentioned, Josh Emmett, who might be the heaviest handed guy in the whole division, and Edson Barboza, who, got knocked out by Giga Chikadze in his last matchup, but I wouldn't want to get hit by him. He hits pretty hard. So I just think Shane Burgos struggles against guys who are slightly better versions of himself, if that makes any sense. Guys who can hit him harder than he can hit them. With Billy Q, I think he can have the lasting power to make this a really interesting fight and at least get this into deep water so that we're going to learn more about the overall game of Shane Burgos. I just think Burgos is a slightly more refined version of Billy Q in a lot of aspects of his game.
Billy fights a lot like Josh Emmett, though, and that's the thing.
He doesn't have the power of him, though.
Josh Emmett? I don't know. He doesn't have the power of Josh Emmett, but he has a lot of those same qualities, and if he's able to up the volume, then all of a sudden you're in a zone, hitting his Q zone. Moon River Rock. Moon River Roll. I look at this one. He's got a great opportunity. So, Matt, I had to look at the odds Well, writing them down after I did all the tape study, as I do. And Burgos open a -170 favorite. He's a -201 best fight odds. Billy Q open +145, +164 right now. Over on Topology, the over-under. I'm going to give you an over-under. I'm going to guess 55% Burgos.
Way above.
You think way above? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess. 1,143 total votes, 76% Burgos, 67% have him to win by decision, the 28% by knockout for the 24% that have Billy. 60% by decision, 23% by knockout. So, honest to goodness, I do have a little bit of a hard time here because for Burgos, as the fight goes longer, sometimes guys can have a little bit more success. Josh Emmett pouring it on as that fight went on. But man, Shane was in that. That was a really good fight. That was a contender actually for fight of the year that nobody talks about. It was like that dark horse of the year. It's a lot of fun if you want to go back and watch it. I just watched it.
I don't think Billy Q has anywhere as close to the power Josh Emmett has in his hands. I really don't.
I didn't say that.
No. It's just like that's the big key for this fight. Burgos is struggling against guys who are more heavy-handed than he is. Josh Emmett has some of the craziest power we've ever seen for a guy his height. And the reason he won that fight was he put a lot of damage on Burgos late and he used his power to win. How did Barbosa win? Was able to land power shots late. Well, Billy Q doesn't really have that kind of natural power late.
But
and that's
he's always there late.
But the big difference is he doesn't land power shots late into the third round like those other two guys do. Edson Barbosa has a whole career of knocking guys out in the third round by output and by power. Look what he did to a guy like Dan Hooker, who is absurdly durable. It's just, I think Billy Q can last until the third round. I just don't think he has the skills to thrive in that third round like those previous two opponents did.
I've seen him do it time and time again, though I have a hard time picking him in this fight. I like Shane Burgos. Again, you talk about technical boxing, work on the outside, and throwing shots to the body, ripping there. Obviously, you saw Sandhagen try it. Didn't work for him. Then what did Petr Yan do? Started ripping to the body and started throwing some really good kicks. Shane Burgos is cut from that same Jimmy Rivera, Julio Arce cloth where they do fight very similar. Now, again, does everybody from the same gym fight the same? No. The James Sim? I don't know. What am I saying?
Rivera wrestles a lot more than Burgos, and Burgos is much more boxing-oriented. But the one thing I will say about Shane Burgos, go back to the Kurt Holloway fight. Now, that's a weird fight because he gets dropped with the first strike that hits him, which isn't a good sign if you're a Shane Burgos believer. But he shows a decent submission game off of his back, and that's why that performance is kind of important. Like, he is able to get the armbar off his back, which isn't something we often see in MMA. Like, getting a submission off your back is really, really hard to do. But he gets dropped by a really early strike in it, so there's some pros and cons to the performance, that's all. I still like Shane Burgos.
I'm not throwing this one on any of my parlays. I like Burgos ever so slightly, but hey, Billy Q surprised me in the past. He surprised you as well. So both of us going with Shane Burgos to get the win. Let us know down below, Billy. We know you're watching, what you think of the video. And Matt, I think this is going to be a big time weekend. This fight's awesome. Make sure you check out Question Mark Kicks 2 hours before the prelims for a final say on this, the others, and the two title fights up at the top you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.